Tour Guide Tell All is a chance to talk about all the things we don't get to talk about in the field usually. So the crazy things we experience, the very salty figures in history that we often have to dance around. And I think it's a way for us to keep doing what we already do, which is tell stories and have fun and get into a little mischief.
Should we say who we are?
Who am I? Who am I?
Dan is one of the greatest tour guides I've ever seen. And when I say seen, like literally I could be a mile away from him on the National Mall and I will see his arms in the air and the red jacket and the red beard and the Nats cap. And like I can hear him like across the city sharing really cool information, but also like, shh, Dan, I'm also trying to lead a tour.
Camden is our mama bear, the glue that keeps us together as a group. She's our conscience and our soul.
Don't get mushy.
And
that was so nice.
That was lovely.
Really nice.
I want you guys to say a funny joke so I can go. I've been practicing. Like it'll be live. That's not going to be some folly sound. Play the drums.
That was very good.
That was
Thank
outstanding.
you.
I love it.
Becca, how long have you been a guide? 8 years? 7?
This would have been my eighth spring. This would have been my 8th spring.
Would have been. It's so sad to say it that way. Becca has the largest amount of scandalous story knowledge of anyone that I know. Second closest would be Rebecca. Dan and I are just here to look pretty.
Look, the Rebeccas are down with the hot goss.
So this is just going to be Washington, D.C. guides. So our travel tips are going to be focused on Washington, D.C. But the stories are going to be American history. Just let's do everywhere.
Yeah.
Worldwide history? Worldwide history.
A little mix of everything.
So the fun thing about Washington, D.C. and kind of the overall reach of being a tour guide in D.C. is that we are coming at you live from 3 states, except for D.C. is not a state. 2 states and a federal district.
Yes.
That's pretty neat.
2 states in a district?
What?
2 states in a district.
That could be our t-shirt.
2 states.
I'm trying to come up with any revenue source that I can think of. This is a hard time to work in an industry that requires socializing.
Yes.
This podcast is going to be so popular. People are going to want t-shirts of us. They're going to want our merch.
Let me talk to you about what being a tour guide to a group of 8th graders is really like. Because it's not just telling stories.
I'll talk about my favorite deaths in the Capitol. I'll talk about adultery. I'll talk about all the duels. I'll be like, mother Dan Sickles, y'all.
I like the idea of us telling the dark side stories, but then also like how the guests have reacted and the things they have said about them. Because that is my vision for the podcast. I think when this is all over, I'm looking forward to getting back into Georgetown and telling stories about the crazy people who live there and live there today.
I was just doing a little reading today because I'll have lots of time to read about Rose Greeley and all the cool work she did. And I just like want to know more about like the women architects and landscape architects.
Okay, so Tour Guide Tell All is kind of what our lives as tour guides is like.
Hey, we usually talk about history, but now we're living it.
This podcast can be our quarantine journal.
I still don't know.